Before we even went to space, people have been integrating astronomy into their cultures across civilizations and across time. The Maya are perhaps one of the more well-known civilizations that were doing that. You may know them for the Maya calendar and for the prediction of the end of the world in 2012, which might have happened. There are several well-preserved ruins throughout where the Maya civilization lived. One that is sometimes overlooked on the beach is the Tulum ruins. Tulum holds some interesting history with their people and their structures, but I am going to focus on the astronomical side of things because I am the Aphrophysicist. Today, I have on display this beautiful heirloom, limited edition. Normally, this sells for $35,520, but if you subscribe today, you can get them for $6,000. I got interested in this when I looked up Tulum before I went to go visit and saw in various websites, various tourist websites saying that Tulum has some buildings that align with the equinoxes or the solstices or something. I took that on face value and didn't really look into it any further. But the truth is that those may not be entirely correct. One of the many things that you'll find about the Tulum ruins is the claim that the most prominent building, El Castillo on the beach overlooking the second largest barrier reef in the world, aligns with the equinoxes. But I looked into that claim further, or I tried to look into that further and tried to find pictures of this alignment happening, and I came up flat. And to understand why El Castillo doesn't align with the equinoxes, you would need to understand how one would align with the equinoxes. Okay, first, let's get on the same page. Earth is round. Okay, hopefully you're past that. And while it's also round, it's spinning. And even more so, it is on a tilt relative to its orbit all around the sun. So the spin axis is tilted towards and pointing towards the North Star. And this tilt is what causes the seasons of Earth. If you take this here sun and this here Earth, you can say this is the spinning axis. In this configuration, with the Earth pointing up there, the northern hemisphere is angled a little bit more towards the sun. That means the northern hemisphere is in summer. It has more sun. And then if you go all the way around 6 months later, half a year later, the northern hemisphere is aiming away from the sun. That's where we have winter in the northern hemisphere, opposite for the summer. And then some amounts in between here and also here, the Earth is neither angled towards or away from the sun. It is angled kind of perpendicular to the sun. And so all places on Earth will end up getting the same amount of sunlight on those days. Those are the equinoxes. There's the spring and fall equinoxes, or if you want to be more sophisticated, is the vernal and autumnal equinoxes. So on the equinoxes, the sun rises due east and sets due west. We can see on this here map that I've procured on Google that the axis across El Castillo, the building, is not going due east or due west. You can see that it's oriented a little bit clockwise compared to the cardinal directions by 21 degrees I measured. And so none of the walls of El Castillo are going to be pointing at east or west, or at due east or due west. They're going to be pointing at 21 degrees south of east and 21 degrees north of west. And we'll come back to those numbers. And so there are no windows or walls that are on El Castillo that are aiming at the equinoxes. But there are other ways that one could indicate the equinox. And some people will say that the shadow descending the stairs of El Castillo, they're going to form their feathered serpent god and have it descending down the stairs on the equinox. And that is true for El Castillo, but not this one. But we'll come back to El Castillo. I don't think El Castillo is entirely done. Another claim that I saw a couple times is that El Castillo wasn't the structure that aligned with the equinox. It was the smaller, more unassuming building near El Castillo called the Temple of the Descending God. It's called the Descending God because of this relief on the front of the building depicting a descending god who's, I don't know what he's doing, descending probably. And so they claim that this Temple of the Descending God, or TDG as the cool kids call it, is what truly aligns with the equinox. They say that because the temple is angled similarly to El Castillo, tilted away from due east and due west, they had to lean their entire temple a little bit 20 degrees. Or that 20 degrees corresponds with the path of the sun at that latitude. The Tulum ruins latitude is at, I think, 20.1 or 20 something, 20 point something degrees latitude. And so if the argument is that if the temple were to lean by that 20 degrees, then the aperture within, or the window, as normal people would say, the window within Tulum will capture the sun, as long as the entire thing is leaned by 20 degrees. But this is wrong for multiple reasons. While the sun does follow that 20-degree tilt, the building doesn't lean 20 degrees south. I wish I found this before I went to Tulum so I could do my own measurements. Oh, wait, just kidding. I can look at pictures. And so I did the math because I am perhaps criminally insane. I looked at pictures from multiple different angles to try to figure out what angle I should be seeing versus what angle would lead to 20 degrees tilt due south. And so again, since the temple is not oriented due east and due west, little bit of a tilt, I measured the tilt that it was and used some basic trigonometry, probably just your normal everyday three-dimensional trigonometry. I found that the angle face on was 16.8 degrees at like the most generous angle I could give it. But if you were to rotate that, this 16.8 degrees would turn into only 17.3 degrees. The Maya were pretty particular about their structures and alignments. It wouldn't really make much sense for them to be that far off. The other thing that makes this claim just wrong is that there's no real reason for the temple to be leaning in the first place in order for it to capture the sun. You can point any old window towards the sun and capture it. The lean of this unrelated wall is not really related to the ability of this window to capture the sun. I wanted to figure out why the temple was leaning in the first place. And you know what they told me? They did it on purpose. That doesn't tell me why. That doesn't tell me how it happened. So that was slightly annoying. The best that I could find was that maybe it was a structural thing, or the architecture around that time had similarly structured buildings. And a third claim that I saw with one of the best preserved buildings in all of the Tulum ruins was the Temple of the Frescos. And they said even more that it aligned with the equinox. It was there to track the sun. It was an astronomical observatory, which, no. There's not really any mention of this in any of the literature that I've perused. The closest thing that I could find is that murals inside of the Temple of the Frescos, which do exist, have some astronomical significance. Basically, this claim only really appears on travel websites. And and also Wikipedia, which threw me off. So if none of these buildings align with the equinox at all, what did? None of them. Aww. But that's not to say that there weren't astronomical alignments at all. And in fact, it's more interesting than just the equinoxes. Anyone can align with an equinox. So if we revisit El Castillo, and you definitely remember that specific number that I told you in the beginning of the video, right? Right? Because I forgot it. 21 degrees. Right. So if the temple was oriented at 21 degrees, then we do have some walls that are aligning in some direction on the horizon. I guess it would not be really possible unless a building were leaning, then maybe its walls would not be aligned with the horizon. Guess that works. But for this non-leaning El Castillo, the building has these walls that are aligned somewhere along the horizon. And you remember it was clockwise, and so the eastern wall would align a bit south of east. And if we go back to our very high-tech diagram and go to winter, then you can see from perhaps my knuckles being the equator that they have to look a little bit lower in order to find the sun over here, compared to if they were here, then they're looking dead on, and so is everywhere else on Earth. But when they're looking over here, wait, that way, they have to look a little bit higher. And so this higher angle means that during the summer, the sun has a higher declination, a northern declination to the celestial equator. And then in the winter, it has a lower declination, more southern declination. And so that means that the eastern wall is lining towards the sun during the winter time, because the sun would be south of east after the autumnal equinox. If you take the dates where the sun actually aligns directly along the eastern wall, then you get the dates May 20th and July 24th. And I didn't know what that meant before. My first thoughts were the exact same as yours, no doubt. The sun maxes out in declination at the winter and summer solstices. There's always going to be some dates that align either or both before and after, because the sun has to cross this path twice between the equinoxes. And so the dates around those are going to be pretty symmetric, which these dates are. El Castillo looks like it's aimed right along the coast, just like everything else. And so that's probably just a thing that happened. Oh, you weren't thinking that? Well, you are now. Well, this archaeologist, Ivan Spice, had a very good argument towards this. He suggests that the number of days between May 20th and July 24th is 65 days, and that 65 days is a multiple of 13, and I'm getting to it. And the 13 days corresponds to one of the fundamental time units that the Maya used in their calendar. And the calendar itself is an entirely different video. I do not want to talk about that here. That is well worthy of its own video, possibly its own series, who knows. Having a multiple of these 13 days, it makes it pretty easy for you to anticipate when the alignment might happen. There might be a cloudy day on the day of the alignment. And so the Maya could be using these multiples of 13 days in their alignment in order to keep track with their calendar and understand when things are happening a little bit easier. There are other buildings in Tulum that have more interesting things to uncover, and I'm going to save that for a third part. I know, I'm sorry. You can subscribe if you want to see it. And again, if you subscribe, you get this lovely moon family heirloom, the double moon. But I want to close by saying, I understand why tourist websites may say that the equinox or the solstice as sort of a simplification for people who are not nearly as crazy as I am. But I always think that reality is more interesting than fiction. This is why I do what I do. And I would rather have no answer at all, despite looking, than the wrong answer. I think it would make me look twice at Tulum saying that they have buildings that align with these two dates, May 20th and July 24th, instead of just the equinox. I know how they would do the equinox or why they would have an equinox alignment, but I wouldn't know where this May 20th and July 24th comes from. And so you can push and get more answers. That'll probably drive up people to come visit and look for more answers. But pushing for these correct answers is kind of my purpose in this channel. I like to get to the right answers and understand how and why things work. I hope you will continue this journey with me. Let me know what else you would want me to explore in these comments, and subscribe if you'd like to see the next part. Until next time, Cosmic Comrades.